In 1993, Demolition Man became a global phenomenon. Sylvester Stallone's futuristic action film grossed $159 million worldwide, a clear commercial success by any measure. The studio system, however, dictated a different reality. Warner Brothers claimed the film lost $66 million. Stallone's contract guaranteed him 15% of gross receipts. That participation should have generated millions in payments. He received nothing. Years passed. Then in 2015, a check arrived for $2.8 million. No explanation, no accounting statement, just money that appeared as mysteriously as the deficit had materialized. This wasn't incompetence. The numbers told a deliberate story, one that required a forensic audit to decode. What that investigation revealed wasn't just about one actor or one film. It exposed the institutional mechanics of how Hollywood manufactures losses from hits. The studio system operates on a fundamental distinction: gross participation versus net participation. Gross points mean you receive a percentage of revenue before expenses. Net points mean you receive a percentage of profit after the studio deducts costs. Historically, net points have proven worthless. The industry's accounting practices ensure films never reach profitability on paper, regardless of box office performance. Stallone negotiated gross participation, 15% of gross receipts. This contract structure should have been bulletproof. The studio couldn't claim expenses eliminated his share because gross points come off the top before any deductions. Warner Brothers found a workaround. They created Rogue Marble LLC, a shell entity designed to hold Stallone's participation interest. That corporate structure became the mechanism for what would follow. The accounting methods that generated the $66 million deficit relied on three primary techniques. Each one transformed revenue into expense through contractual language that appeared legitimate on the surface. Distribution fees represented the first method. Warner Bros. Charged itself 30 to 35% of all revenue to distribute its own film. The studio acted as both producer and distributor, then billed the production for distribution services. This wasn't an external vendor charging market rates. It was the same corporate entity moving money between internal divisions. The fee applied to theatrical revenue, home video sales, television licensing, and international markets. Every dollar the film earned triggered an automatic deduction that flowed back to Warner Bros., just under a different accounting category. Overhead charges provided the second mechanism. Studios routinely add 10 to 15% of production costs as general overhead. Compensation for corporate infrastructure, office space, executive salaries, and administrative support. These expenses bear no direct relationship to the specific film. A production shooting on location in Mexico still gets charged for Warner Bros.' Burbank headquarters costs. The overhead percentage applies regardless of whether those corporate resources were actually utilized for that project. Interest accumulation formed the third component, and the most devastating. Studios treat production budgets as loans they make to themselves. They charge compound interest on those costs, often at rates above market lending rates. The interest begins accruing before the film is released. By the time Demolition Man reached theaters, the debt had already grown beyond the initial budget. As revenue came in, interest continued compounding on the remaining balance. The mathematics created a scenario where costs increased faster than revenue could offset them. These three methods worked in concert. Distribution fees reduced gross revenue by a third. Overhead charges inflated the baseline costs. Interest ensured the deficit would grow over time rather than shrink. The system wasn't designed to reflect economic reality. It was designed to ensure films remained unprofitable on paper while generating substantial returns for the studio. This wasn't Warner Bros. Inventing a new approach. The institutional framework had been perfecting these techniques for decades. The pattern Stallone confronted had legal precedent stretching back decades. In 1988, humorist Art Buchwald filed suit against Paramount Pictures over Coming to America. Buchwald had sold the studio a story treatment, a basic narrative concept that bore striking similarities to the Eddie Murphy vehicle that eventually reached theaters. The film became a massive commercial success, grossing $288 million worldwide. Paramount's accounting told a different story. Despite the box office performance, the studio claimed Coming to America lost money. Buchwald's contract entitled him to net profits. According to Paramount's ledgers, no net profits existed. The case went to trial, and what emerged during discovery fundamentally altered how courts viewed Hollywood accounting. Judge Harvey Schneider examined Paramount's financial statements in detail. His ruling established that net profits in Hollywood contracts were essentially meaningless, a contractual term that bore no relationship to actual profitability. The court's language was unusually direct. Schneider described the accounting practices as unconscionable, noting that even wildly successful films could be structured to show losses indefinitely. Paramount eventually settled, but the legal precedent remained. Net participation had been exposed as institutional fiction. The Buchwald case should have reformed the industry. It didn't. Studios simply became more sophisticated in their methods, and the pattern continued with even bigger properties. Winston Groom experienced this firsthand with Forrest Gump. The 1994 film grossed $677 million worldwide, one of the highest-grossing releases of the decade. Groom had sold the rights to his novel with a contract guaranteeing him percentage points of net profits. Paramount, the same studio from the Buchwald case, claimed Forrest Gump lost $62 million. The mathematics defied comprehension. A film that dominated the box office, won Academy Awards, and generated massive ancillary revenue somehow existed in a state of permanent debt. Groom's response became legendary in literary circles. He refused to sell Paramount the rights to the sequel novel. In interviews, he used a specific phrase, Hollywood accounting. That term had existed before, but Groom's case gave it cultural weight. The phrase entered common usage as shorthand for institutional deception. The pattern revealed itself across every major studio. Similar cases emerged involving Peter Jackson and New Line Cinema over the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and various profit participants in the Harry Potter franchise. Each case followed the same structure: massive commercial success, accounting statements showing losses, settlements that occurred before full trials could expose the complete financial picture. Studios preferred settlements for a specific reason. Trials required discovery, the legal process where internal documents become court evidence. Discovery would force studios to reveal the complete mechanics of their accounting systems. Settlements allowed studios to pay individual claimants while preserving the institutional framework. The system survived because it never faced full transparency. By 2015, Stallone had watched this pattern repeat for decades. Then Warner Brothers made a critical error. The $2.8 million check arrived without context. No cover letter, no revised accounting statement, no explanation of what the payment represented or why it was being issued more than 2 decades after Demolition Man's release. For Stallone's financial team, the check raised more questions than it answered. If Warner Brothers was voluntarily paying $2.8 million, what did the complete accounting actually look like? Stallone's representatives demanded a full forensic audit of Demolition Man's financial records. Warner Brothers resisted initially, but the contract's participation clause included audit rights. The studio was legally obligated to provide access to the books. What the forensic accountants discovered confirmed what Stallone had suspected. The $66.9 million deficit was manufactured through systematic manipulation. The audit identified specific mechanisms. Distribution fees had been charged on revenue that never left Warner Brothers' corporate structure. When the studio licensed Demolition Man to its own home video division, it charged a distribution fee on that internal transfer. The same pattern applied to television licensing and international distribution handled by Warner Brothers subsidiaries. The studio was essentially billing itself for services, then counting those fees as production expenses. Overhead allocations proved even more problematic. The audit traced specific overhead charges back to their source. Demolition Man's budget had been charged for executive salaries, corporate office rent, and administrative costs that had no direct connection to the production. Some overhead expenses appeared on the ledgers for multiple films simultaneously, the same corporate cost being allocated to several projects, multiplying the deduction. Interest charges revealed the most damaging pattern. Warner Brothers had classified the production budget as a loan from the studio to the production entity. The studio then charged compound interest on that loan at rates significantly above prime lending rates. The interest began accruing during production before the film generated any revenue. By the time Demolition Man was released, the debt had already grown beyond the initial budget. As the film earned money, interest continued compounding on the remaining balance. The mathematical structure ensured the deficit would expand rather than contract. The audit also uncovered intercompany licensing arrangements. Warner Brothers had sold distribution rights to its own international subsidiaries at rates below market value, reducing the revenue reported to Rogue Marble, while the subsidiaries profited from the actual market rate deals they negotiated with theaters and broadcasters. The studio was simultaneously underreporting revenue and overcharging expenses. Internal documents provided the final evidence. Emails and financial projections showed Warner Brothers executives discussing Demolition Man's actual profitability. The film had generated substantial returns. The accounting statements sent to Stallone bore no relationship to those internal assessments. On April 12, 2017, Rogue Marble LLC filed a formal complaint in Los Angeles Superior Court. The legal language was unusually direct for a Hollywood contract dispute. The complaint alleged outright and obviously intentional dishonesty in Warner Bros.' accounting practices. It detailed the specific mechanisms the audit had uncovered and demanded full restitution. Warner Bros. Declined to comment publicly. The studio's silence was strategic. Any public statement could be used in legal proceedings. Legal experts predicted the case would follow the historical pattern: arbitration, settlement, no admission of wrongdoing. Studios had refined this approach over decades. Pay enough to resolve the individual case, but not enough to establish dangerous precedent. The $2.8 million check was reframed by the lawsuit. It wasn't payment owed under the original contract. It was an attempt to forestall exactly this kind of forensic investigation. Warner Bros. Had hoped the money would satisfy Stallone without triggering a full audit. That calculation proved incorrect. The accounting methods Warner Bros. Deployed against Stallone represented 1990s technology. The institutional control persists, but the mechanisms have evolved. Vertical integration in the streaming era has made profit manipulation simultaneously more sophisticated and more opaque. The old system required elaborate fee structures and shell companies to hide profits. Distribution fees, overhead charges, and interest accumulation created paper trails that forensic audits could eventually decode. The new system eliminates that vulnerability by controlling every stage of the value chain within a single corporate entity. Warner Bros. Selling content to HBO Max exemplifies this shift. When a studio licenses a film to an external platform, market forces establish a price. Netflix bidding against Amazon creates transparent valuation. When Warner Bros. Sells to its own streaming service, no market exists. The studio sets an internal transfer price that can be structured to minimize reported profits for the production entity while maximizing value for the platform division. This matters for talent participation because contracts still reference traditional revenue categories: theatrical gross, home video sales, television licensing. Streaming collapses those categories into a single platform payment. The contract language that protected Stallone's gross participation becomes meaningless when there's no theatrical release, generating transparent box office numbers. Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit against Disney over Black Widow demonstrated how this plays out in practice. Johansson's contract guaranteed theatrical release with compensation tied to box office performance. Disney released the film simultaneously on Disney Plus for a premium fee. The theatrical gross was substantially reduced, directly impacting Johansson's participation payments. Disney's defense argued the contract didn't prohibit streaming release, technically accurate, but only because streaming didn't exist when the contract was negotiated. The systemic advantage of vertical integration becomes clear in that dispute. Disney controlled the production, the theatrical distribution, and the streaming platform. Every variable in the compensation calculation belonged to a single entity. The studio could optimize for corporate profit while minimizing talent participation, all within legal contract boundaries. Streaming platforms also eliminate public revenue reporting. Box office numbers are transparent. Trade publications report them weekly. Streaming viewership data remains proprietary. Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max release selective metrics when it serves their interests. Comprehensive data stays internal. This opacity makes audits exponentially more difficult. Forensic accountants could examine Demolition Man's theatrical revenue because box office reporting created independent verification. Streaming platforms provide the only source of viewership data, making them both the reporter and the auditor of their own numbers. The Stallone case offers a blueprint for challenging this new system. Demand forensic audits, challenge shell entities and internal transfer pricing, force discovery that exposes the complete financial structure. But the institutional response has also evolved. More actors now demand upfront fees rather than back-end participation. The risk of fighting the accounting system for years outweighs the potential upside of profit points. The unresolved question remains: who audits the system when the studio owns every component? Stallone's broader goal wasn't just personal restitution. It was ending creative accounting industry-wide. That goal remains unfulfilled. Settlements preserve the system by avoiding precedent-setting trials. Each case resolves individually, leaving the institutional framework intact. The power dynamic persists because studios still dictate contract terms. Talent can negotiate for better protection, but the fundamental structure remains unchanged. The machine adapts its methods while maintaining its core function, concentrating profit at the corporate level while minimizing payments to participants. Stallone's case didn't dismantle the machine, but it revealed the gears in unusual detail. The forensic audit created a record of exactly how studios manufacture losses from profitable films. That documentation matters, even without systemic reform. The $2.8 million check remains the most honest document in the entire dispute, proof of guilt disguised as generosity. Warner Brothers sent that payment because the accounting couldn't withstand scrutiny. The money was an admission the studio hoped would avoid becoming evidence. Today's vertical integration is yesterday's creative accounting with a new interface. The institutional control persists because settlements protect it from legal precedent. The system survives by resolving individual cases while preserving the framework that generates them.